She says, do you wish you had less stressful days? Yes. Are you tired of feeling overwhelmed? Do you wish you had more time in the day? If you answered yes to even one of these, you're in the right place. Our speaker today believes that life is too short to be working ourselves into frazzled stress balls. That's hilarious. Have you ever felt like that? A frazzled stress ball. That's a mouthful. She has been the featured organizational expert in more than 150 media interviews and is the author of 2 Amazon best-selling books. She's coached hundreds of clients to productivity success and spoken to thousands of entrepreneurs, educators, and professionals on the go, teaching them how to regain control of their hectic work and personal lives. When she's not helping go-getters slay wasted time as the inefficiency assassin, she can be found sneaking adult beverages onto the lawn bowling court. I love that. That's a great one. Please join me in welcoming from San Antonio, Texas, a devout cheese eater, a nerdy number cruncher who will share her framework for liberating your productivity skills from deep cover, Helene Segura.
Thank you very much, Robbie. Appreciate it. And thank all of you for being here today. I'd like to take a quick poll of the ages in the audience. Give me a quick Yahoo if you are in your 20s. Yahoo! All right, we've got one. Give me a Yahoo if you're in your 30s. How about your 40s? Your 50s? 60s? 70s? And we know we have some 80s in here. Very good. Do we have any 90s? Not yet. Okay, we've got 80s. Wonderful. Now you'll notice that we have a wide cross-section of ages in here. But no matter what age you are, each one of you is given only the same amount of time every single day. How many hours are you all given? 24. No matter how old you are, no matter whether you own your own business or work for a company or you're retired, each one of us has 24 hours, and we get to decide what to do with those hours. Now, when people find out that I'm a time management consultant, they always ask me one of 2 questions. One of them is, what is the best task app that I can use so I can get everything done? And then the second question is, if they don't ask that one, then they ask, can you please tell me what is the best calendar I can use so I can get it all done? And what they don't like is the answer that I give to them. Because time management is not all about all of these different apps and all these different calendars. They're good secondary tools, but they are not the key to managing your time. Each one of you already possesses the tool that you need to be an efficient time manager, and that is your brain. Everything that you've heard today, starting with Ursula, and then moving to Stone, and then going to Dr. B. Everything has to do with your mind and the decisions that you make, because all of the power belongs to you. So today we're going to be talking all about your mind and how to use it, because it's your brain that decides whether or not you procrastinate. It's your brain that decides whether or not you're going to blow off what you're supposed to be doing and go do something else. And it's your brain that decides how you use every single second, every single minute of the day. Now, since time management truly is all about mind management, I'd like you to think back about how you have viewed time throughout your life. So think back to the memories that you've had, the life experiences that you've had. And I'll share one life experience with you as an example. Back when I was younger, growing up in Los Angeles, you heard that I live in San Antonio now. I've spent my adult life in Texas, but I was born and raised in Culver City. Now, back in the 70s, back in the days when there was no automatic anything, no automatic locks on doors, you didn't have to wear seatbelts, everything was a beautiful avocado green, so late 70s. My brother and I were playing in the house when we weren't quite supposed to be, because the rule was you do not play ball in the house. And my mother was setting the kitchen table for dinner. And suddenly the phone rings. And my brother and I know, oh, it's probably my dad calling to say he's going to be late from work again. So when my mom walks over to the wall, remember this is the 70s, so the phones are attached to the wall instead of right here. So the phone is on the wall. And the instant my mom turns her back, my brother and I know this is our chance to play with the tennis balls. So we're throwing the balls to each other. And you know how when, back in the day when you used to play outside, when your mother called you to come in, you couldn't hear her. No matter how loud she called, you just could not hear her voice until the 5th, maybe the 10th time, and then you came back in from playing. But 10 seconds before my mother was about to hang up the phone on the wall, we knew we should stop playing with those tennis balls if we knew it was good for us. So before she could walk back to the kitchen table, my brother and I were standing at attention with the tennis balls behind us. Because we were too young to know that when you stand at attention, it means you're guilty. But that didn't seem to faze my mom. Instead, she just stared at us, and she pointed to the front door, and she said, "Get in the car." Now, when your mom says that to you, what do? You go get in that car. So my brother and I pile into the back seat, and we drew this invisible line down the back so that he could stay in his territory and I could stay in mine. Got to keep everything separate. And my mom starts driving, and we're asking her, "Mom, was that Daddy on the phone? Is he going to be late? Mom, who was on the phone? Mommy, are we going out to dinner?" Back in my household, it was a huge treat if we got to go to Sizzler once a month. Sizzler. Everybody remember Sizzler? Huge treat. So we were hoping that we were going to meet my dad at Sizzler, but my mom wouldn't answer any of our questions. So she kept driving, and eventually we started seeing these red and blue swirling lights out the side of the car. And they were beautiful, but it wasn't Christmas, so what's going on? My mom pulls over to the side, and that's when we spot a group of police officers. And with the police officers is my dad. My mom walks over, and my dad is standing there in this group of police officers with his suit coat draped over his arm and his neckties undone, and he's got this cut on his cheek with dry blood. My mom brings him back over into the car, and as soon as my dad gets in, we say, "Daddy, what happened? Are we going to Sizzler?" No, we were not going to Sizzler. But my dad did explain to us what happened. He said, "Kids, do you remember my boss, Mr. Byrne? We had a late meeting tonight, and he asked me to drop him off at his house. And I didn't realize he did not lock his car door when he got out. When I got to the next stop sign, a man with a gun jumped into the car, held a gun to my face, and told me to drive to this spot. And that's when he jumped out and ran away." My brother and I were in awe. "You came face to face with a robber? Did he give you any money? Are we going to Sizzler?" We never found out what happened to that robber. And no, we never went to Sizzler. And obviously, an important lesson that we learned from that day was to always lock your car doors and to be very aware of your surroundings whenever you're at an intersection. But the more profound lesson happened that evening when my brother and I were hiding off in the hallway and my parents thought that we were asleep. I could hear my mom yelling at my dad, saying things like, "Why are you always late? And I know it's not just you. I've talked to Chet, I've talked to Christine, I've talked to everybody in your department. You guys work like dogs all day long. You come home late, you go dragging to work the next day. What is the point? Your kids are not going to know who you are." And that memory about time stuck with me. To this day, I remember how precious time is, all because of an incident that happened with my dad, which led to an argument later on that evening. Now, fast forward to my first job out of college, and I had a very similar argument with my fiance already at the age of 22, already arguing about time and relationships and how are you going to use this time because time is so precious. Now that argument with my fiance was 25 years ago, and we have been married for a very long time. But since then, I've been able to study neuroscience and behavioral psychology and figure out how we tick, because so many of us work against our brains instead of with them. So today I'll be sharing with you the three-pronged framework that I've developed to kind of simplify this whole process of how to better use your time. Now, how many of you have seen the movie Aliens with Sigourney Weaver? Very good. So this was number 2 in the series, where Sigourney Weaver, Lieutenant Ripley, is asked to go back to the planet because they couldn't get the colonists on the radio. I wonder what happened to them. So fast forward to aliens ripping apart all the Marines that had gone with Ripley over to this planet to rescue the colonists. And they're down to just 6 people in Command Central. And Bill Paxton, rest his soul, but he usually played a whiny character, and he did so in this case. He played Private Hudson. In the middle of all this murder and mayhem, he's yelling, "What are we going to do? We're all going to die!" And Ripley, very calmly, takes a step back and says, "Get me blueprints, get me grids, get me specs. We have got to come up with a plan." Now, Ripley understood that while having tools is great, you have to be strategic before you can go tactical. So Ripley understood the C in CIA, which stands for create clarity. Just like what you've heard throughout today, all of us who have been speaking to you today talk about, you need to define what is important to you. And you need to define what life should be like for you. Define what success means. Define what happiness means. And this is where we need to start with time management. A client of mine, Nancy, she was in the PR business for 25 years. She was open and warm and seemingly confident to everybody and anybody. But behind closed doors, she is what some people might describe as a hot mess. She had so much to do, and she felt like she just couldn't get things done. And the breaking point was when she felt like she was having an anxiety attack. She went to her therapist, and her therapist said, "Okay, you are maxed out on blood pressure control pills, you are maxed out on antidepressants, and you are maxed out on anti-anxiety pills. You can't take any more pills. You've got to cut back on stress. You've got to cut back on work." Oh my gosh, cut back on work? How can I cut back on work? I have too much to do. Which is a bad place to be, having a near panic attack when you're going to the therapist because you are having panic attacks. But what Nancy began to realize is that she needed to create clarity. And so this is where we started with her. So we started with creating the top 3 work priorities and the top 3 personal priorities in her life, because they are equally important. Now you might be sitting there saying, "Well, duh, I already know what my priorities are." But the problem is they reside in our subconscious. We don't think about our priorities until somebody specifically asks, like at a conference, "What are your priorities?" But it is so important that those priorities reside in the forefront of our brains, because every decision we make about our time should be based on whether or not what we're about to do is going to support our personal priority or our work priority. Because too many times we chase our tails and we don't even understand what it is we are chasing. Nancy would get down, so down on herself, thinking, "Oh, I haven't accomplished anything. I haven't done anything." She wasn't clear about what she wanted. So how did she know what to chase? Now, when she created those top 3 priorities for work and for personal, then we dug a little deeper and we started looking at her targets. Each one of us already has really great goals, but usually those goals are a little too broad and not measurable. We have goals like, "I'd like to spend more time with my children," or "I would like to have higher reviews on my customer service surveys." And those are wonderful goals, but how do you measure them? We need numbers. How much time would you like to spend with your kids after school or on the weekends? How much relationship time do you want to have with your spouse? What percentages do you want on those customer service surveys? Now, once Nancy developed all those targets, she realized she was pretty darn close to all of this, and yet she was kicking herself at the end of each day, thinking she had not done enough. So that's why it's so critical that you create this clarity and you establish these targets. So that's what we did with Nancy. She figured out what her goals were and what those measurable targets were. And once she could see this and look at this list every single day, she had a focus and a purpose. She understood what it was she was living for and what she would lose if she spent too much time at work. At work, she understood what she was working for and understood what her focus would be so that she could have that free and clear mental time at home with her family. Because just because you're physically present with somebody does not mean you're mentally present. This way she could be mentally present when she wanted to be with all of her loved ones. So the C in CIA is create clarity. Now, since you've known me for all of 15 minutes, I'm sure you can totally trust me because I'm about to ask you to participate in a little exercise. What I'd like you to do right now is to please pull out your purses. I promise it's not a stick-up. Please go ahead and pull out your purses or your wallets. So guys, take out your wallets. Ladies, take out your purses. And within your purses, take out those wallets. Have your wallets on the table. And inside your wallets, some of you might have this green paper stuff. It's a little retro, but it's called cash. I'd like you to take the cash out. And if you don't have cash, it's okay. Just look longingly at your neighbors. They can buy you drinks later. Alrighty, so take the cash out, uncrumple it. You're going to take the bills, your cash bills, and you're going to create a little fan with them. If you only have one bill, it's okay. Just pretend you have a fan. Just hold that bill proudly. I see a few people with the wadded 20s. Obviously, you stopped at the ATM before coming over. We're going to be your best friends. All right. Now, those of you without the cash, you're just going to sit still and watch very carefully. If you do have the cash, you're going to scoot your chair back just a little bit so that way you have some room to stand up. There we go. Beautiful sound. If you were dozing earlier from all the carbs at lunch, you should be awake now after that sound. Okay, those of you with cash, you're going to stand up. Okay? You're going to have that fan of cash in front of you. You're going to bend your knees just slightly because you don't want to get stuck there. So just slightly, okay? That way you get a little bounce. Now, when I count to 3, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. When I count to 3, you're going to throw your cash into the air, okay? All of your facial expressions all at once. And when I first asked you to take out your purses, you were a little hesitant. And then I asked you to take out wallets and money, you thought, oh, this might be interesting. Now, when I ask you to make a fan of cash, there are some smiles. And then when I ask people without cash to sit still and the people with the cash to stand up, there's some giggling. Then you're standing there with your fan of cash, but as soon as I said, throw the money into the air, there were fake smiles across the room. Those genuine smiles turned to fake smiles. A few people just flat out dropped their hands and said no.
Oh, is she going home?
You made that decision within 1 second of me saying the word throw. And yet when it comes to time, we just throw our time away. We have got to value our time even more than those $1 bills in our hands because our time is so much more valuable. And that's why it's so important that you create the clarity to understand what your work priorities are, what your life priorities are, and what your targets are. Because when you make a decision about your time, you need to be able to make it based on how important it is going to be for you to do that. Your time has got to be as valuable or more valuable than that cash in your hands. So if you remember nothing else from today, remember that fan of cash and how you made the decision to guard it. And I need you to do the same thing with your time. Create that clarity. Moving on to the next letter in CIA. The I stands for implement, structure, and flow. What is that? How many of you have seen the TV show Monk? It was on about 10 years ago with Tony Shalhoub. All right, Monk lovers in here. If you haven't seen the show, you should know that Monk, played by Tony Shalhoub, was a detective. I love spy shows and thrillers and books and things like that, so I loved Monk. And Monk was medically diagnosed with OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. Now, our society, we tend to tease people with OCD. If you're really organized, your friends will say, oh, you have OCD. Or if your silverware drawer is actually straight, then your mother-in-law might say, oh, you have OCD. So we tend to tease people about it, but he was medically diagnosed with OCD. Everything had to be in a certain order throughout the day or he threw a fit. He had all of this structure and all these routines, and if anything got out of whack, oh my goodness, he had an absolute meltdown. Now, we want to have structure in our day, but we don't want to have so much like Monk that if something goes awry, we're just going to have a complete meltdown. On the other hand, we can't have so much flow that we never have a plan. For instance, some of my surfer buddies back in LA, they will still wake up and say something like, yeah, man, I'm just going to go with the flow, dude, and do whatever. Which is why they're still sleeping on their mom's couch. So we need to, sorry if any of you are sleeping on your mom's couches, I do not mean that. So we need to find that balance. We need to be able to implement structure and have a plan for the day, but also be able to go with the flow. Because when you have structure, that's fine. You have this plan, you have this to-do list. But the problem is, if you deal with humans and or technology, your plan is never going to be perfect. But as long as you know where you're starting and where you want to go, you can get there in a different way if you have that structure, but you also have flow. Implement structure and flow. Now, this is the most critical part after you establish creating clarity, is understanding where your time needs to go each and every day to be more successful. To understand where your time should go, you also want to understand how it gets lost so you can plug that up. Now, the average person loses up to 3 hours per day from procrastinations, distractions, and overwhelm. Oh my. 3 hours per day. Procrastination, distractions, and overwhelm. Now, the awesome thing about that statistic is that procrastination, distractions, and overwhelm are self-imposed. Which means they can be unimposed when you realize that you're doing it. So you can save that 3 hours each day. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, okay, I do not lose 3 hours each day, think about this. Have you ever had anybody come up to you and say, oh, guess what I did from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock yesterday? I procrastinated, I got distracted, and then I got overwhelmed, so that's how I lost my 3 hours. It doesn't happen that way. It happens in what I call time leaks. You lose 2 minutes over here, 30 seconds over there, 5 minutes that way, 10 minutes. It's not like that 3 hours happens all at once. But when those time leaks are added up, that's how much time you could possibly lose. Now, if you're still saying, okay, it's not 3 hours, let's call it 30 minutes. Okay, let's call it 30 minutes. What if you were able to get 30 minutes per day back in your life? Over time, that adds up to 15 work days per year, just from saving 30 minutes a day. How many of you would like to save at least that 30 minutes a day and get the 15 days a year back? I would think so. So let's take a look at where some of these time leaks are so you can understand how to plug them up. The average office worker loses 6 weeks per year from time leaks just looking for stuff. Looking for files. Looking for the keys to the file cabinet. Looking for somebody in the office. 6 weeks. Now, if you factor in how we in the States celebrate Thanksgiving and the December holidays and productivity slides, you factor in those lost 6 weeks just looking for stuff, that's like not working the last 2 months of each year. That's how much time is lost. Just from looking for stuff, from not having an organized office. Now, guess what adults do an average of 110 times per day? No. Close. Check their phones. And thank you for not shouting anything nasty, because a couple of audiences have, so thank you ladies and gentlemen for keeping it clean. The average adult unlocks their phone 110 times per day. Now, neuroscience tells us that when we switch tasks, we lose an average of 60 seconds each time, going from one task to another and then back again. 60 seconds. So just using our phones as an example, if you, on average, unlock your phone 110 times per day, you are losing 110 minutes of brain restart time just from doing that. Time leaks. This is where time goes. Now, I am not suggesting that you completely turn off your phones and never check email or messages. I'm not suggesting that. However, you want to check them when your brain is ready to receive that information, not when it's being interrupted. Because that phone is a tool. It is not your boss. You control your day, not your devices. However, so many of us let our devices control our days, and that's where some of these time leaks go. So consider turning off those notifications and checking your phone when your brain is ready to receive it. With my client Nancy, we shut off her phone, her notifications, but she checked every 10 minutes. She had 10 minutes of focused work time and then would check her phone. She got far more done that way than allowing her phone to interrupt her throughout the day. Even just 10 minutes of focused work time. Some people don't even know what that feels like because they don't do it at all during the day. So, phones, major time leak. Now, another time leak is, going to the next slide. There we go. Interruptions. Researchers at UC Irvine discovered that when you are interrupted from a task and then you go work on another task, it takes up to 25 minutes to get back on task, if at all. Now, if you start adding up your interruptions from the day, you could lose anywhere from 2 to 45 hours per day from interruptions. Thank you. Somebody did the math. Obviously, this table did not have wine. There are 45 hours in the day. We started off earlier talking about how we all have 24, but this is where some of the overwhelm starts to build up because we lose so much time to interruptions that we allow when we drop everything because somebody else is having an emergency and they are trying to make their emergency yours. And in that instant, because we hadn't learned yet about the fan of cash, we instantly say yes to everything that's dropped right into our laps before thinking about, is what I'm about to do going to support a work priority or a personal priority? Another source of time leaks, interruptions. All right, so you're being interrupted, you're overwhelmed, you think, I know how I'll catch up with time. I'm going to multitask. Because if I do 2 or 3 things at once, I should get everything done, right? Not quite. Researchers at the University of Glasgow decided to do a little test between men and women. And after this research was released a couple of years ago, the headlines literally around the world, these headlines were in papers in LA, New York, Tokyo, London, the headlines screamed, women multitask better than men. Yeah! I mean, ladies, we knew that already, but now we had scientific proof. So I was really curious about this, and I decided, being a nerdy number cruncher, to actually click on the link in this online article to see, well, what did this study say? What really did happen? Because most of the time, we just read little summaries of what journalists are telling us that studies were about. But what the study found is that when men and women do a single task, they are at about the same productivity levels. However, when a second task is thrown in, men's productivity drops by 74%. Women's productivity drops by 69%. Therefore, women multitask better than men. But does anybody see a problem with those numbers? Look how far your productivity drops. Anywhere from 69 to 74%, depending on your gender. So does multitasking work? No. And yet this is another source of our time leaks when we're trying to juggle things and trying to do everything at once. You are far better solo tasking for 10 minutes at a time than you are multitasking all day long. So you want to solo task. Now, it's at this point that a lot of people are now completely overwhelmed because they're so far behind. And even though they know they have so much to do, they'll do what Nancy does when she gets into overwhelm. She'll sit there with a cup of coffee or Red Bull or whatever she has to try to wake her up, and she'll just stare at everything on her desk. Now, when I was observing her during our first session, we were debriefing, I asked her, what were you doing when you were sitting there staring at your desk? And she said, I knew that I had a to-do list for the day with 30 things on there. I knew in the back of my mind that I had 1,000 things to do, but in those moments, I had no idea what to do next. And so instead, she procrastinated. She grabbed her phone and started checking Facebook, which is what we tend to do when we procrastinate. Psychologists define procrastination as the act of wanting to feel better now. It is the adult version of a 3-year-old's I don't wanna tantrum. That is procrastination, but we have a choice about whether or not we procrastinate. Because if you are paying attention to what you're doing throughout the day, you can catch yourself in the act and actually tell yourself, no, this is not beneficial to me and I can stop this. Now, will you be able to do that 100% of the time? No, because you're not a robot. But the more attention you pay to how you use your time throughout the day, the more likely you will be able to catch yourself going into this mode. Now, this is a part of implementing structure and flows, understanding where your time leaks go and then structuring your day as much as possible. Before you leave work every single day, you should know what the top 3 tasks are that you need to get done the next day, and then block out that time in between what you already have scheduled. If your job is primarily reactionary, that means everybody comes to you for help and they expect you to answer and all of that good stuff. You don't want to schedule your day minute to minute to minute throughout the day, because you've got to leave time for fighting fires or for wonderful opportunities that get dropped in your lap. So that's why it's important not to schedule every single minute of the day, but at least start your day with some structure so you understand what it is that you need to get done. Because as was mentioned earlier, what do most of us do first thing when we walk into the office in the morning? We check our email and we let our inbox run our day. And most of that is low-hanging fruit. It seems easy to answer at the time, but it does not support our work priorities or our personal priorities. So it's critical to have that structure in your day. And once you start understanding how long things take to complete, you'll be better able to make estimates about your time, which will help you become even better with those to-do lists. Because how many of you write down on your to-do list not only the task, but how much time it should take you to do it? Very good. I see some hands. Most of us just do this brain dump of everything we would like to get done the next day, and it's not humanly possible to do all that because we haven't estimated the time for it. So as you're creating those to-do lists for tomorrow or Monday, whenever the next workday is going to be, not only list those tasks, but list approximately how much time it should take. And you will start creating much more humanly realistic to-do lists. And you will feel better because you will get a lot more crossed off because they are realistic, okay? So that is implementing structure and flow. Now, If you're still thinking, well, you know, a minute's not really a big deal, 30 minutes isn't a big deal, we're going to do a little something right now to get your mind thinking about that. In just a little bit, I'm going to, again, count to 3, but instead of taking out cash, what I'm going to ask you to do is stand up and stare at the screen until I ask you to sit back down. And as you stare at the screen, you're not going to talk to your neighbors, you're not going to turn to a waitress or bartender and say, hey, bring me one. You're just going to stare at the screen until I ask you to stop, okay? So 1, 2, 3, stand. Thank you. Please have a seat. Now, how did it feel just standing there staring? Awkward, okay? Like a time waster. Okay, so for the type A personalities in here, you are probably thinking, oh my God, what is this woman doing? Do you know what we could be doing with this minute? Do you know how much I could be getting done right now? So those would be the type A personalities. The non-type A personalities were thinking stuff like, maybe I should have had salad, more salad at lunch. And I wonder if I should stop at the casino on the way home. So there are different things going on in the brain. However, did anybody realize how long I had you stand?
Yes. 30 seconds.
It was 1 minute.
Was it?
1 minute. Do you know how much, ask a type A person, do you know how much you could have gotten done in that 1 minute of focus time? And you have 60 of those time blocks every hour to get stuff done. In an 8-hour workday, you have 480 of those time blocks to get stuff done. There is enough time to get your priorities done if you know what your priorities are and you are focused throughout the day. Time management truly is all about mind management. Now, I have a little story about the importance of teamwork. Even if you are an entrepreneur, you don't work in a vacuum or a silo. You have other people around you. They may not be employees, they may not be contractors, but you work with other people in the community, or you work with fellow business owners. Sometimes you get to choose your team, sometimes you don't. But when you do get to choose the people you work with, it's really important to choose well, because you never know what kind of situation you might get into. As an example, and so it's really funny that earlier you mentioned Chartres. I can't pronounce the city very well, but the city that she referred to earlier when she was talking about her trip to Paris is going to factor into my little story as well. My husband and I decided to go on a bucket list trip to France. We had always dreamed about seeing Paris at Christmas. And after losing a really close friend of ours to colon cancer, we thought, why should we wait until we're retired to travel? We need to travel now before anything happens. So a few years back, we decided to go to Paris for Christmas. And then we started panicking because we don't know French. And then we had heard from so many people when we told them about our bucket list trip, they said, oh my gosh, the French are so rude to Americans. Sorry, Nicole. Now, okay, yeah, it doesn't count as France. Now, fortunately, a few weeks before this bucket list trip, I met the most wonderful Frenchman. And after about 30 minutes of drinking wine and conversing, I felt comfortable enough to ask him some very delicate questions. And I said, sir, I need to ask you something, a huge favor. He said, well, sure, of course, I will help you. And I said, my husband and I are going on a bucket list trip. We heard that the French don't like Americans. Do you think you could give us a few tips so that way we don't offend anybody over there and we don't get arrested? He said, oh, sure. Rule number 1, always start your conversations in French, never English. And I was thinking, okay, I better learn a couple of French words, otherwise we're really in trouble. Number 2, always be polite. Make sure you say merci for thank you and s'il vous plaît for please. I thought, okay, I just learned 2 French words. Awesome, I can do that. Number 3, be very formal. You want to say madame for miss and monsieur for sir. Okay, I just learned 2 more French words. This is great. And he said, and number 4, make sure you are aware of the French can-do attitude, which looks like this. It means you can do it on your own. I said, merci, monsieur, thank you so much for this advice. Now, we had decided to take a quick little side trip to a small town called Chartres. And my husband and I thought, okay, there's no nightlife in the area where we're going to stay, so that is the perfect place to do laundry. So we could go back to Paris with a suitcase full of clean clothes. We travel light, we just do carry-on. Now, unfortunately, the lady who worked at our hotel was cartographically challenged and did not draw us a map to a laundromat. We were in some kind of industrial area and we were totally lost. So we slugged it out and we decided, okay, we're gonna walk up and down all of these streets, and we finally found a laundromat. Now, we were tired, we were sweaty, even though it was winter because we had our winter coats on, but we could not take them off. You see, being geniuses, we had decided to wash all of our clothes. So we get into the laundromat, and we were horrified to see that all of the instructions were in French only. No English. I thought, oh my gosh. So I see a lady with a mop. I figured she's got to work here. I walk up to her, and in my best French, I said, pardon-moi, madame. Hamon, s'il vous plaît? She stopped and looked at me and replied, and went back to mopping. I go back over to my husband, and using our limited Spanish skills from high school, we figured out what the instructions say on the sign, and we figured out how to get the soap and how to get everything started. So we went back to the benches and we started relaxing. And my husband's filling out postcards, and I take out the travel guide so I could work on my French. And it's at that moment I realized I had asked the woman with the mop for ham in Spanish instead of soap. So no wonder why she didn't want to help the stupid American. Now, a little later on in the evening, my husband and I are planning on just relaxing the rest of the night, and we're watching all the residents from the apartments above come down to get their clothes out of the wash and take them to hand dry upstairs. Well, there were 2 machines left running. We had our clothes in the dryer with about 15 minutes left, and then there was 1 washing machine still going. When all of a sudden, the door of the washing machine bursts open, clothes come out, water comes out, and my husband and I go into a panic. There's nobody there to help us. So he went running for that mystery mop that the lady was using earlier. I ran over to the clothes and I started shoveling them back in, when all of a sudden I saw the most beautiful lace bra ever made on this earth. And I hold it up to the light because it belonged to somebody far more voluptuous than I. And I was just staring at it, and from the back of me I hear my husband yell, "Stop dreaming! Clothes!" So I finished throwing the clothes back in, but it was too late. There's water everywhere, and the entire laundromat is flooded. So my husband and I looked at each other, and then we looked at the corners of the room to look for security cameras. And there weren't any, which means there'd be no proof that we tried to help. We did not want to take mugshots naked. So my husband grabs the clothes and starts throwing them into the plastic bags. I grab the postcards and I grab the books, stuff them in tote bags. We run out to the street and realized we were lost when we got here. We have no idea where to go. We spot a light on down the street. It was the only building with lights on other than the apartments above, so we ran over there, and it was a cafe. And thank goodness the waiter spoke English. He said, "Oh, welcome, please, hang your coats by the door." Oh no. Merci, no. So we sit down, and in a time like this, where we're so stressed out, we need comfort food. And to us, comfort food would be red wine and some cheese. The waiter comes over. We had shoved all the wet clothes underneath the table so he couldn't see them. And the waiter says, "May I take your order?" And I said, "Oui, monsieur. S'il vous plaît, fromage and vin rouge. He says, fromage, cheese is for dessert. First, you must order the appetizer, then you must order the entree, and then you may have fromage, cheese for dessert. My husband and I looked at each other, and we looked at the waiter, and we replied, Monsieur, s'il vous plaît, fromage and vin rouge. So he brought the wine and the cheese, and my husband and I toasted to teamwork. Because no matter how smart you think you are, and how fiercely independent you are, we all need people in our lives to help us. Preferably ones who are smarter than you, who can get you out of trouble. And that's why the A in CIA is assemble your team. You need to have that personal team and the work team around you. Your personal team should consist of whoever it is who resides in your household. If you're a household of one, like my client Nancy, then we recruited a couple of her best friends and also her 2 adult children. They were her personal team. So they were going to communicate with each other, to share with each other what their goals were, their targets, sharing that creation of clarity with each other so they would understand how to support each other. And then at work, she was also a department of 1. So her work teams became the people she would regularly work with on different projects. So they didn't stay the same throughout the year. They switched depending on what she was working on. But she discovered how important it was to have a team. Have any of you ever heard of a guy named Bond? James Bond? Okay, a few of you. Very good. Just in case you've never seen a movie before, James Bond is Agent 007 who works for Her Majesty's MI6. And James Bond is what literature expert Thomas Shippey calls omnicompetent. That means he can do anything. You drop him into a foreign country, he can find his way around without a map. If he needs to escape from somewhere, he can drive any sports car, no matter the make or model, if it's a standard on the right or on the left. He can fly a helicopter, he can fly a plane, it doesn't matter. If he needs to shoot his way out of a situation, he can fire any weapon. Have you ever seen James Bond fumble with a safety? Oh, how to use this? No. He knows exactly what to do. That's why men want to be like him and women want to do things to him. It's James Bond. He can do anything. And yet, James Bond has a team. Mr. Omnicompetent. He has M, who provides him with resources. He has Moneypenny, who provides him with intelligence. Yes. And he has Q, who provides him with gadgets. He has a team. So if James Bond, the man who can do anything, if he has a team, we need one too. So that's why it's so critical to have your personal team and have your work team, have people there to support you in your life. And for those people who are around you who do not support you, perhaps it's time to cut ties. You need to be efficient with the time that you spend with those people, and the people you spend time with should be fully supportive of you, just the way you are of them. So you want to have those teams in your life. So it's very important that you create clarity, implement structure and flow, and assemble your team. And at the same time, recall those life experiences you've had, so that way you don't keep making the same mistakes over and over. When you reflect, you want to reflect on the positive things that you've done and focus on that. If I can do this right, I know I can do this next step right. So think about those life experiences. One more that I'll share with you happened when I was in high school. As I mentioned earlier, I love spies and thrillers and love reading all those books and was really into Nancy Drew books when I was growing up. And then in high school, got totally into Miami Vice. Do you remember Miami Vice? Don Johnson, Sonny Crockett, oh my goodness. Now, I was so into Miami Vice that I wanted to become a DEA agent. That's all I wanted to be when I was in high school. I even went to Goodwill and I invested in pastel blazers and the linen pants and those little shoes that you can wear without socks because I so wanted to be an agent. And I went into college with that same dream that I wanted to be this DEA agent. Now, a family member of mine introduced me to a retired FBI agent when he discovered that this is the job that I wanted to have. So having seen too many movies, I was afraid this might be a setup at first, but it turned out he really was an FBI agent. And I went to his condo to interview him about what it took to get into law enforcement. Keep in mind, this was before the internet. So it's not like I could Google anything. I had to do some serious research to find out what was required. And as Dr. Say was telling me all of these different stories about his glorious career and how he had gotten every single promotion he had ever asked for and worked on these fascinating cases, and I'm on the edge of my seat listening to everything, I realized this home has no warmth. And I realized it was because there was no color and there were no pictures of people. And I asked him about that. I said, Dr. Say, where are all the people? And he paused and he got really quiet and he said, well, remember all those stories that I just told you about everything that I accomplished in my career? I said, yes. And he said, well, I never said no at work. I always brought my work home. Or if I didn't bring my work home, work was all I was thinking about. And I did this all so I could support my family and give my family the very best. And the irony of it all is that my family left me because I always worked, I brought work home, and when I was home without the work, that work was in my head. And that was another lesson about how precious time is, how valuable the people in our lives are, and how we need to pay attention to the time that we spend with the people we love. Just as much attention as we pay to what we need to get done at work. Now, my dad and Dr. Say lived in a time when you were supposed to do things solo. You weren't supposed to ask for help. But times have changed. We have so many resources in front of us. We've got webinars and books and consultants and seminars, conferences like this, where you can not only get educated, but also meet other people in the audience who can become a part of your team, and you guys can help each other out. So it's so important to take advantages of all the resources that we have out there. And just remember, the CIA, when it comes to time management, you want to create clarity. Understand what it is you are living for and what it is you are working for. You want to implement structure and flow. So you want to have structure in the day, but also be flexible enough to go with the flow and morph your calendar as you need it. And then make sure that you assemble your team. Surround yourself in your personal life and in your work life with people who you truly value and they value you. Time is in your hands. Time management truly is all about mind management. You decide how you're going to use every single minute of the day. You do have the power to tell your time what to do. Now, before I leave you today, I want to point out the little cards that are on your table. You'll notice a picture of me. That's when I paid somebody to do my hair. I don't know how to do it on my own. On the back side, if you have that little rip card at the bottom, for those of you who are interested in getting a productivity kit, I'm going to share with you the same materials that I use with my client Nancy. So I've got time planner templates and a webinar on procrastination. Don't delay in watching it, haha. And there's also a podcast in there about how to create time for exercise. So there are a whole bunch of resources. So if you would like those resources, all you need to do is just fill out the card and leave it at my table that's right off to the side outside the door. So when you go take a little break, just drop it off out there. And then I will email you that kit on Monday. And no, it will not happen tomorrow because I don't work on Sundays. So it will happen on Monday after I'm home back in my office. And so I hope you take advantage of those resources because like I said earlier, we live in a time where we have so many resources at the tips of our fingers, so we need to take advantage of them. And the last thing I'll leave you with is, and I want to drill it into your heads, time management is all about what? Mind management. And you do have the power to tell your time what to do. Thank you.
Helene Segura, thank you so much.